I've seen Shannon Sharp talk about it. And what I don't understand is they work for ESPN. So why are you hating on a business? Far be it. This is the headline, y'all. Sue Bird calls out ESPN host for, quote, hating on WNBA playoff ratings after Caitlin Clark's exit. Respectfully, Sue Bird, you are inaccurate. It is just that simple. You are one of the many who have contributed to the upliftment of the sport in a phenomenal, incomparable way.
Sue Bird versus Stephen A. Smith. Two basketball legends going head-to-head over Caitlin Clark and racism in the WNBA. Who's right? Who's wrong? Let's dive into this heated debate and see what's really going on. Sue Bird just lit the basketball world on fire with her comments about Caitlin Clark and racism in the WNBA. And guess what? Stephen A. Smith is not having it. Bird called out the media for their coverage of Clark and pointed out some serious issues about racism in the league. She's saying it's been a problem way before Clark even stepped on the court. But Stephen A. Smith, he's fired up. He went on his podcast and said he's disgusted with Sue Bird. Can you believe that? He's defending how he talks about the WNBA and says we need to look at the numbers. You know what's crazy? This fight is about way more than just two basketball legends going at it. It's about to expose some ugly truths about the WNBA that nobody wants to talk about. Are you ready for this? Ready or not, here comes the truth. Sue Bird didn't just speak out. She ripped the band-aid off a festering wound in women's basketball. Her words are about to change how you see the WNBA forever. So what exactly did Sue Bird say that's got everyone talking? She didn't hold back, that's for sure.
I'm disgusted with Sue Bird, okay? Sue Bird, Hall of Fame caliber, Sue Bird, WNBA, college basketball. I've seen Shannon Sharp talk about it. And what I don't understand is they work for ESPN. So why are you hating on a business ESPN is in? I want to say the semifinals games are up like 130%, and that's without Caitlin. Matter of fact, one of the best people that I've ever met, or one of the best women I've ever met in professional or collegiate sports. I love her. But the fact of the matter is, she swelled the interest in the sport. That made people stick around and want to watch the others. A rising tide lifts all boats, which is what we were saying.
Bird straight up called out the racism that's been plaguing the WNBA for years. She's not talking about some new problem that popped up overnight. No, she's pointing at an issue that's been there well before this year. But here's where it gets real. Bird took aim at the media and how they're talking about Caitlin Clark. You know all those stories about jealous players targeting Clark? Bird's not having it. She called that narrative insulting and said it's probably like potentially the biggest insult you can throw at an athlete. Ouch. Think about it. These are professional athletes we're talking about. They've dedicated their lives to being the best. And now people are saying they're jealous of a rookie. No wonder Bird's fired up. But wait, there's more. Bird's not just defending Clark, she's calling out the whole system. She pointed out that a lot of the negativity is coming from Twitter trolls and bots. It's not the players or the league, it's the social media circus that's stirring up drama. And get this, Bird's not saying players shouldn't go hard against Clark. She's actually saying the opposite. According to Bird, if you don't play tough defense on Clark, she's going to drop 35 on you. That's not hate, that's respect. Now, let's talk about the media for a second. Bird didn't pull any punches here either. She called out journalists who don't know the league well enough. You know those negative stories that keep popping up? Bird saying a lot of that comes from reporters who didn't do their homework. As she put it, the way it came across was they did none research.
Far be it. This is the headline, y'all. Sue Bird calls out ESPN host for, quote, hating on WNBA playoff ratings after Caitlin Clark's exit. I understand that it's going on still without her now that she's out of the playoffs because the games have been great. What she said about your boy, okay? This is the wonderful, the marvelous Sue Bird. I love her to death. Love her. Interviewed her a few times. I'm such a fan. I'm a huge fan of her as a person and player. One of the great pleasures I've had was interviewing her in the past. I'm only addressing her points about me and what she said in relation to the whole Caitlin Clark story. And while I am quite sure, Sue Bird, that you can educate me on the game of basketball, even though I've been covering it for 30 years, because you are phenomenal. You are one beautiful human being. I love you to death.
But here's the kicker. Bird's not just talking about bad reporting. She's talking about how these stories are hurting the league and the players. Remember those petty, jealous narratives she mentioned? Bird wants you to know how damaging they are. She said, "I cannot stress enough how insulting that is." While Bird was calling out the media, another storm was brewing. Stephen A. Smith heard what she said, and he's not letting it slide. His response is, "It's about to turn this whole debate upside down." Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back when he fired his shots at Sue Bird. He went on his podcast and straight up said, "I'm disgusted with Sue Bird. I don't appreciate this article that I read." Can you believe it? This isn't just some random critic. This is Stephen A. Smith, one of the biggest voices in sports media. But why is he so fired up? Smith's not buying Bird's take on how the media is covering the WNBA. He's saying that when he and Shannon Sharpe were talking about the league's playoff ratings after Caitlin Clark left, they weren't hating. They were just talking facts. And here's where it gets real interesting. Smith's dropping some serious numbers to back up his argument. He's saying that with Caitlin Clark in the mix, WNBA viewership is through the roof. We're talking astronomical numbers here, but get this, even the games without Clark are breaking records. That's huge, right? Let's talk about attendance for a second. Smith pointed out that the Indiana Fever, Clark's team, is leading the league with an average of 17,350 fans per game. That's a 39% jump from last year. You know what that means? People are showing up for Clark, and they're showing up big time. But here's where Smith really takes issue with Bird. He's saying that Bird's got it all wrong when she claims ESPN personalities are framing the WNBA negatively. Smith's not having it. He's asking, what was Stephen A. Smith and Shannon guilty of exactly? In his mind, they're just reporting what's happening. Smith's got a point when he says we need to acknowledge Clark's impact on the WNBA. A rising tide lifts all boats. What he's saying is that the league should be all about this increased attention. It's good for everyone, right? You want to talk numbers? Smith's got more. He's pointing out that WNBA merchandise sales are up 450%. And get this, WNBA specific merch? That's up 100%. Smith's saying all this growth is because of Clark's influence.
But this is what she said. Viewership numbers with Caitlin Clark are astronomical. She is a big draw. She brings in all the things. And yes, the games where she's not playing have lower viewership. What do you mean, ESPN? So because I work at my day job on ESPN, I'm supposed to ignore the facts? Respectfully, Sue Bird, you are inaccurate. It is just that simple. But in the WNBA playoffs, and we'll use the semifinals, where Caitlin obviously is not in it because her team lost, are still breaking records from previous WNBA years and are still cracking 1 million viewers. You know I do. You know I do. But I would say this to you respectfully, Sue Bird. You know basketball. I kind of know news.
That's some serious star power. Now, don't get it twisted, Stephen A. Smith isn't trying to tear Sue Bird down. He made it clear that he still respects her big time. He said, "I love her to death. You are one of the many who have contributed to the upliftment of the sport in a phenomenal, incomparable way." So this isn't about personal beef, it's about how we talk about the WNBA and its stars. So what's really going on here? We've got two basketball legends with two very different takes on the same situation. Bird saying we need to watch out for racism and unfair coverage. Smith saying we need to recognize star power when we see it. They're both passionate about the WNBA, but they're coming at it from totally different angles. This fight between Sue Bird and Stephen A. Smith isn't just about who's right or wrong. It's shining a light on some big questions about the WNBA. How do we talk about star players? How do we handle tough issues like racism in the league? And how do we balance celebrating new talent with respecting the players who've been grinding for years? Turns out there's a darker side to this story that nobody's talking about. Remember when Alyssa Thomas dropped that bomb about racism in the league? That was just the beginning. The fight between Sue Bird and Stephen A. Smith? It's just the tip of the iceberg. There's something way bigger going on in the WNBA, and it's time we talked about it. Let's get real for a second. Alyssa Thomas, an 11-year veteran of the league, said something that should make all of us sit up and take notice. She said, "I think that in my 11-year career, I never experienced the racial comments like from the Indiana Fever fan base."
She's a guest rolling up on late night television. Why? Because we got in an argument about the WNBA. It doesn't matter who we have a league rights deal with, who we have a contract with, what games we air. We cover sports. We know all of that. Guess why we know? Because we covered it. We're in the news business. You are one of the many who have contributed to the upliftment of the sport in a phenomenal, incomparable way. I'm supposed to ignore the astronomical impact she has had compared to others? How Team USA was stupid for not putting her on a team to make sure you help uplift the sport even more? Don't y'all want a greater profile?
That's not just a complaint, that's a wake-up call. And it's not just Thomas. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation everyone's talking about, is speaking up too. She didn't mince words when she said, nobody in our league should be facing any sort of racism, hurtful, disrespectful, hateful comments and threats. When your biggest star is calling out racism, you know it's a serious problem. But here's the thing, this isn't new. It's been happening for years. The Birdsmith debate just brought it into the spotlight. Now we're seeing the ugly truth that's been hiding in plain sight all along. Think about it. We've got players talking about racial slurs being hurled at them during games. We've got fans crossing lines that should never be crossed. And for what? Because they don't like how someone plays. Because they're jealous of someone's success. That's not fandom, that's hate. And it's not just happening on the court, it's happening online too. Remember when Bird talked about those Twitter trolls and bots? She wasn't exaggerating. Players are dealing with a barrage of racist comments every time they open their social media. It's relentless, it's cruel, and it's gotta stop. But here's where it gets even crazier. This isn't just about a few bad apples in the crowd. This is about a whole system that's been letting this slide for way too long. The league, the teams, the media, everyone's got a part to play in this.
She continues, because she brings up my name. So these numbers are still really high, and they're still really meaningful. And yet some people continue to flip that. I've seen Stephen A. Smith talk about it. What was Stephen A. Smith and Shannon guilty of exactly? Why would you say a quote like that? We work for ESPN, so I'm supposed to turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to the facts? We also know that some members of her fan base can be racially insensitive, dare I say. The impact that Caitlin Clark had and still continues to have on this team, this league, this sport. Nah, it doesn't work that way.
You know what's really messed up? Some people are trying to brush this off. They're saying it's just part of the game, that players need to toughen up, but that's bull. No one should have to toughen up against racism. That's not part of any game. And then let's talk about the media for a second. Bird was right when she called out journalists who don't know the league well enough. How many times have we seen stories that paint players as angry or aggressive when they're just being competitive? How often do we see black players getting criticized for things white players get praised for? It's not just bad reporting, it's harmful stereotyping. This whole controversy is shining a light on some deep-rooted issues in women's sports. It's not just about who gets the most attention or who brings in the most fans, it's about respect. It's about dignity. It's about treating every player, regardless of their race, with the same level of professionalism and humanity. And you know what? It's about time. It's about time we had this conversation. It's about time we called out the racism that's been poisoning the league. It's about time we demanded better from fans, from the media, from everyone involved in the sport. Because here's the truth. The WNBA is full of incredible athletes doing amazing things. They deserve to be celebrated for their skills, not attacked for their race. They deserve to play in a league where they feel safe and respected, both on and off the court. This isn't just about Sue Bird or Stephen A. Smith anymore. It's about a whole system that needs to change. And you won't believe what's happening next. Players are speaking up. Fans are demanding action. The league is being forced to confront issues it's been sweeping under the rug for years. All right, let's break this down. Sue Bird and Stephen A. Smith just blew the lid off some serious issues in the WNBA. We're talking about racism, unfair coverage, and how we treat our stars. It's not just about who's right or wrong anymore. This is about changing the game. Bird's calling out the media for lazy reporting and harmful narratives. She's saying these stories are insulting to players and damaging the league. And you know what? She's got a point. We need to do better. So here's the deal. It's time to look at our own biases. How do we talk about women's sports? Are we falling for cheap drama instead of real reporting? The ball's in our court now. Are we gonna keep ignoring racism in sports? Or are we ready to make a real change? It's time to step up and do better.